Hello world, it's Dave. I got a new teaching English in Japan video for you here that's going to deal with the title "Kids Are Kids." And so to start this off, I'm just going to kind of jump into a little anecdote of my life to kind of like lead into this whole thing. We're going to ease in. Um, Earlier in my life, I had trouble, and I had trouble with people specifically. I was kind of like just generally frustrated with the population, we'll say, and just the way that people acted. And I thought, what's a way to escape my frustrations to deal with this problem? Because I did want to deal with it. I didn't just want to give up on it. And so what I thought I would do, inspired by one of my friends, is that I would go tree planting, time-honored tradition in Canada. And I went out tree planting, and it was fantastic, but I ran into this problem again where I ran into more people. Surprise. And the point that I'm just trying to make, which is a simple one before I continue, is that no matter where you go in this world, people are people. If you think that you're going to escape away to a different place, whether it's a different job or a different culture or a different anything, people are people no matter where you go. And so it's best to accept that fact in life, unless you're going to live as a hermit, that the way that you move beyond this is to learn to understand people, and as much as we have our differences, kind of realize how much we're all the same. The void that exists between us is so much an illusion. And so that's my little intro to this whole thing. Kids are kids. So I want to talk about Japanese kids in the classroom and clear up a few myths and inform you as to how you might succeed more, given your experience of teaching them. And so the first thing I want to talk about is myths. Let's talk about school kids in Japan and myths that are propagated around the world about these kind of kids. The first myth, and this is one I bought into wholly because I'm a big Japanese Japan nerd, and so I thought kids over here, I was like, they're all pretty much samurais. They come to class as samurais, full armor, and they're incredibly disciplined. They never say a word in class. They're going to religiously follow whatever your instruction is. Wrong, 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 wrong. Kids over here are not any more disciplined than any other place in the world. My experience is Canada, but I went through the whole public school system. I had a few years in the private school system. Kids are kids are kids. It doesn't matter where you go. They're not going to be any more or less disciplined. They're going to be, there's going to be good ones. There's going to be bad ones. There's going to be exceptional ones you can't believe how much they excel or are kind. And at the same time, ones who you just cannot believe are so negative and stupid. And you just can't believe that, what hole did they crawl out of? This kind of thing. Another myth that is spread about Japanese classrooms, at least where I'm from, is also the amount of discipline that would occur in a Japanese class, where I would think, this is a real honor shame based society. So if you go out of line in a class, you probably have to commit seppuku, which is ritual suicide, where the more manly you are, the more strikes with a blade you can create across your chest before you keel over or have the guy behind you cut your head off because you gave up. Turns out it doesn't happen. Turns out the amount of discipline in Japan is not particularly high. It's kind of down here until they've attacked somebody, and then the level of discipline is up here. But if they're just being ridiculous in class, very little is done about this. There's kind of a rule similar to what I believe has been done in the States. It's called leave no child behind in the States. And what this amounts to is kind of pushing kids through a system because they don't want to leave anybody behind. So, again, forgive the expression, but push the retards along as well before they've actually proven their ability. That's being a bit harsh, but I just mean to say that discipline is a good thing, and without it, you have people. You're not doing a child a favor to just pass and pass and pass him if they're not learning anything. You're not leaving them behind, but you're certainly not educating them at the same time. And it seems as though Japan struggles with this a little bit as well, where discipline is absolutely an issue. There's just not enough of it. And I could go on to give examples in classes where I've been blown away with the behavior of kids and that nothing has happened, no one has stepped in uh, to deal with this or to try and do something about these kids acting in this way. A perfect example of this is even in Canada, you know, socialist mecca that it is, if a child misbehaves in a class, most classes, you can remove him from the class. You can send him out from it. And in Japan, this is not the case. If a child is, you know, being disobedient, if a kid is misbehaving in a class, you cannot send them out of the class. And so that kind of leaves your hands tied in terms of what you can do. What are you going to get a little bit louder at them? You know, you don't have that basic tool to separate them from the group in the first place. Now, this is all sounding kind of negative to begin. You know, I'm talking about these kids and how they're not very disciplined, and you know there's not much, you know, there's not much disciplinary action put on them when they do, you know, step unreasonably out of line. But all I'm trying to lay the groundwork for is that at least they're behaving no differently than probably in your home country. This is just how kids behave, and so you want to remove these idealistic views that you might have when you come here, that you're going to walk into a class of perfectly behaved children who hang on every one of your words. It's just not going to happen. So I want to move into now maybe talking a little bit about getting a viewpoint from their perspective. You know, you can accept that kids are kids, people are people, but then especially so with the subject that you've come in to instruct them on, you're teaching them English. Now, in Canada, the equivalent of this would be if you were learning French. And my own experience with French was that I hated it so much. I had a psychological review to try and prove that I was retarded and was not capable of doing the classes. That's how much I hated doing languages in my own school. And so when you have these kids, I'm probably an extreme case. They might not have actually been as bad as me, but English, from their perspective, is very, very difficult. For a few exceptional students, it might be interesting. Like I say, there's a range of people and a range of kids. But just like you might say in your own country, say you're from the States, and you have to learn Spanish there, maybe that's what you have to do. And you say, you know what, I'm an English speaker, it's an English country. Sure, there's a lot of Spanish around, but do I really even need to learn this? Do it like this is not practical for me. There are a million excuses in a child's mind as to why this is not terribly important for them and why would they ever have any interest in it. So kind of the point I'm trying to say is, again, they're kind of like you or me when they behave in this way, and so you should recognize that. Now I've got a little thing here. I say I want to make a quick note on age. I've done this in a previous video, so I won't go into depth on it. But one of my teaching videos I've talked about this, where age is also a major factor. If you're dealing with younger kids, much easier to deal with. They don't have a sort of prejudice built up already. When you get into later grades, they're worried. They're very worried about where they stand in a social hierarchy, and English is very low on gaining coolness in that social hierarchy, and so they're far less invested in your classes. So the point being that younger kids, easier to deal with, you're going to get your points across. It'll be, in the end, easier for you to deal with them, and sort of shows, again, the importance of catching kids when they're young, because you can leave that first impression that's more positive. So now that I've talked about these couple of things, they're like us, why they might be frustrated, like you might have been frustrated with your experience, I want to talk about how to succeed. I don't want to just talk about how difficult it is. How can you take this knowledge and then turn it into something positive? A final note to something that you might be frustrated with and that is important to your success, possibly the most important, is patience. Above all else, patience. Because when kids, like I behaved when I was younger, when kids don't yet have that interest, when they haven't been nurtured in the correct way to enjoy something, they often end up mocking it and are afraid of it, much like we all are with things that we don't understand or we're a little bit intimidated by. And I can tell you, my experience in the first while in my classes, it's hard, especially when you first arrive in Japan, because you're doing the best you can, or hopefully you're trying the best that you can. And so when things go wrong, you kind of take them a bit personally. You know, you're like, damn it, I came halfway across the world. I came here to teach you. I'm trying to do my best, and you won't even give me the time of day. You know, And I'm a particular target because I'm freakishly tall in this culture. I've got this rich honey dip voice, so whenever I say something in class, I get mocked. They're like, "Brrr," and kids mock me and stuff. And again, this is nothing personal, no matter how it seems like this. And for a lot of people, it'll be like, oh yeah, I got elephant skin, nothing gets through to me. But for the people who are a little more sensitive, like myself, don't ever let this get through to you. Forgive the kids for the fact that they're young, they're learning, and they're discovering themselves. And a lot of just being a kid is being a little shithead. Let's be honest. You do a lot of stupid things and being derogatory, mocking people. It's just what you do, and that is a reflection on the child. It has nothing to do with you. But really, I think adults are just big kids, and kids take things pretty personally. So it's difficult to fight that. But for your own good, recognize that it's nothing to do with you. If the class seems to be ignoring you, if you go in and they're sleeping, it's not personal. It's their world. It's not yours. What matters is what you do then with your perspective. So patience, so important to succeeding. And then beyond that, carry yourself positively. And go on a little rant here about this. When you go in and kids are down, kids are sleeping on their desk, you go in there, and I don't mean be fake, don't have this stupid yellow bright smile on your face like everything is fantastic, but I really mean go in there with a mindset that regardless of anything, you're going to be positive in this class, and whatever content you have, you're going to approach it in a way that you're really going to do your best. Try and thinking about doing your best. It's cliche, but it's true. Go in and approach it very positively. Don't get sucked into, like, if everybody's down in the class that you start to get down too, because it just becomes a kind of a feedback loop where they're down, so you're down, so they're down, and it gets worse and worse and worse. The only hope is to be more positive, and I've seen excellent teachers bring these students out of their slump when they go in with really good energy and they're excited about what they're going to do, not in a fake way. So much of this is being genuine. And it really changes the whole energy of the class. I swear, like some of these teachers, I watch them and they're like conductors. Once they get a hold of that class, they control it, and they do it by being positive. So what I'm trying to say as well is that when kids remember a class, for what you're teaching them, especially for all the reasons I've cited, it's difficult for really to ingrain the English into them. They're not remembering so much the content associated with the class, but they're remembering the emotional association with the class. And so what you're trying to achieve alongside, as much as you're teaching English, you are teaching kids an appreciation of learning and what their impression of learning is. And you want this to be something that they enjoy. The younger the better. If you catch them at grade, 2 or 3, sure, you can still make a difference, but the younger the better. And when you change that opinion, when you make them realize, that this guy's really positive, I'm gonna like look up one day from my sleep that I'm having, and maybe I will listen. That's how you're going to make your difference with them, is this emotional impact that you have on them. And I know I'm focusing a lot on more the social interaction that you're having with these kids, but this is truly the base to then teaching them well, let's be honest, the really boring points of what they have to get through, the grind. It takes an interest before you're going to be willing to learn the grammar point that is so difficult and alien sitting on the board there. So you need to go about it in this way, where first you're creating an atmosphere that they're interested to learn in, even if they're resistant to it, by positive output. That's going to control the classroom. That's what's going to let you to succeed with these kids. Another little note, again, I've talked about this. Now I'm talking about creating this atmosphere in the class where you start to win the hearts and minds of these kids. A big part of this is outside of the class. Hate to say it, but it's absolutely true, because in the class, I'm repeating things from another video, but this is very specific to deal with kids, that if you participate in after-class activities, all the kids go to clubs, whether they're playing kendo or they're running or they're playing soccer or they're playing music or all these different things. If you go to them, I guarantee you a better experience in your class afterwards, because then you build a bond with these kids outside of the enforced experience of learning English, and they'll want to do it more when they get back in the classroom with you, because when you catch them in that environment outside of it, there's no pressure anymore. There's less of a social hierarchy that's going on, and so you'll probably hear more English when you go to their soccer class. They'll like feel more relaxed, and they're just gonna talk a whole bunch more English with you because they're not being judged for it. And then they also believe that you as a teacher, or you as a person, less as a teacher, less as a sensei, are just someone who's real. You're genuine. You're not there just some academic, get in your face, boring ass grammar points and vocab guy or girl. You're somebody there who's a part of their whole experience at school, and they're going to see themselves as less apart from you. They're going to see themselves as having a real relationship and wanting to participate more in classes. And I can say this is true of my experience when I was in high school. Again, it's all people are unique, but it's amazing how similar we are. When I played rugby when I was in high school, and one of the best teachers I had was a rugby coach, because man, you connected with that guy out there in the field, and when you were in class, you just saw him as this cool guy. He was your mate. He wasn't so much just this academic figurehead, which for the most part we resent and have difficulty with. Um, so that's it. I feel I've been pretty concise in this, and I feel like if people do have questions beyond what I've said, that they can absolutely send them off to me. Um, but that's where I'm going to leave it today. So, in the theme of breaking through boundaries, breaking through in often a very difficult scenario, I've got a good song to recommend today, which is going to be from an underrated movie. Also, if you want to be inspired, watch this movie. It's from Cloud Atlas, most underrated movie of the year, and one of the most beautiful songs. Totemo Kive is boundaries are conventions. And I'm going to put that down par usual in the links for people to check out. And if you want to contact me, again, email is going to be down there below as well. So thanks for dropping by my channel. Thanks for checking this out. I hope it was useful for you. And yeah, as I like to say, thanks for tripping with Dave. And until we meet again next time, world, ciao for now.